In this video, we have a trinomial where a does not equal 1, and we're going to factor, and we're going to factor by using the grouping method. The first thing we have to do is take our ax squared term and multiply it by our c term. So I'm going to take 4x squared and multiply that by a negative 6. That gives us a negative 24x squared. Our next step is to find all the factors of negative 24x squared. As you can see, x times 24x gives us 24x squared, 2x times 12x gives us 24x squared, and so on. But we have a negative 24, so each of these pairs of numbers has to be, one number has to be negative to give us that negative 24x squared. Something else to consider is that we have to figure out which pair of these numbers adds together to give me a negative 5x right here, the linear term. Because it's a negative number, we are going to make the larger of the two numbers negative, so that when we combine them, we're left with a negative number. So now I'm going to take x and I'm going to add negative 24x. That gives me a negative 23x. A 2x plus a negative 12x gives me negative 10x, so neither of those work. 3x plus a negative 8x will give me a negative 5x, and that's the one that we want. My next step is to bring down my leading term here, the quadratic term, that's a 4x squared. And I'm going to follow it with my first term here, so that's going to be a plus 3x. Then I'm going to add in the second term that I needed, which is a negative 8x. And then I end with my constant, or my c term, which is a negative 6. So I started with my quadratic 4x squared, and then I replaced this minus 5x with this positive 3x plus a negative 8x. So all we did is replace it. The next step is to group. Okay, this is the grouping part. I group my first two terms, and I group my last two terms. From here, I'm going to pull out the greatest common factor from each of these pairs. So the greatest common factor of 4x squared and 3x is just an x. And then if I kind of like, it's like dividing out or reducing it by x. If I pull that out, I'm left with two new terms. So this x breaks this one down and then removes this one, so you're left with a 4, just a single x, plus 3 there. So I'm going to write that up here. And I'm going to do the same thing with my, my pair here. I'm going to find the greatest common factor. GCF of negative 8x minus 6 is going to be a negative 2. And then I'm going to reduce both of these terms by a 2. And actually I'm reducing it by like a negative 2, not like, but I'm reducing it by a negative 2. I'm going to be left with a 4x plus 3. And I'm going to write that up here. Now if we do this correctly, technically we have this huge big long expression here. I'm going to almost like do another greatest common factor. This binomial should be the same. I'm going to write this up in front. And then the leftover there is going to be the x minus 2. And these are the two factors.